Hello my YouTube friends, welcome back to my lab. If you're new to my channel, I'm Yori and I upload makeup and beauty videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. So hopefully you'll enjoy this video, consider subscribing and joining my makeup family. Today's video is going to be an Ulta haul follow-up or update or hauled it and how was it. I've seen these videos named absolutely everything. I'm just gonna call it a haul update for now, but if you have any recommendations on what I should call it, leave those in the comment section down below. I recently uploaded a 6,000 point Ulta haul which had a ridiculous amount of products in it, but today's video is going to be an update specifically on the eyeshadow palettes, and I will follow this one up with a review on all of the other products. So if you're interested in seeing how I like the palettes that I hauled in that video, then let's get started. The first palette that I hauled in that video was the PUR Pro x Etienne palette, and this is the makeup palette collaboration by Etienne Ortega. Here is what your palette looks like, and here are your shades. So I've been using this palette for a while now, and what I found that I really like about the palette is that the mattes blend really nicely, but one of the things that I noticed is that despite there appearing to be pops of color in this palette, like the shade Midnight and the shade Paradise, absolutely everything else aside from those two shades is a neutral. Like if you block out that blue and that purpley tone, you have mostly a warm tone eyeshadow palette. It does have the versatility to have more of a cool tone look if you focus on this shadow, these two over here, that one, and maybe this row here. In my opinion, this palette is not a necessity for me in my collection because I own a lot of neutral palettes. I own a lot of warm tone palettes. I have a few cool tone palettes, so this palette didn't really add anything to my collection, but if you're looking for a versatile everyday kind of palette and you do need something like that, then this I would say is actually a good one. The eyeshadows are intermediately pressed, so they're not too firm or stiff and they're not too powdery either, and I really like that. I found that the shades are a little more pigmented than you would think when you first apply them because I use this palette mostly for my work makeup looks, and I found that when I did a look with these two shades, this one and maybe this one on my lid, it was a lot darker than I anticipated, so you want to go in maybe with a light hand or use some of the lighter shades. Another thing that I noticed is that the looks tend to go towards the more smoky. If you use the blue and the purple, you don't see bright blue or bright purple. The colors are a little bit more muted. So just understand that if you pick up this palette, then it's going to be for a more neutral kind of everyday type of look, but they are really easy to blend, and every makeup look that I made turned out very pretty. Now, if you wanted to do something artistic and dramatic, you could, but it would always be in the realm of the neutral colors, and I prefer to play around with color a little bit more, and so I think the palette is nice. I do think that someone who is just starting to build their makeup collection could benefit from the palette, and I think that it performs really, really well. I really have no complaints about it for what it's intended to be, if that makes any sense. Another palette that I picked up on that haul was the Tarte Toasted palette. This one is a fairly new palette to my collection. Of course, here is what your packaging looks like. It is the same size as the Tartelette in Bloom palette in the original Tartelette palette. Now, first off, this palette smells divine, absolutely divine. It's a beautiful warm tone neutrals palette, and I have created very nice looks with this palette. All of the shades function really, really well. I would say that I found this palette to be really powdery. Very, very close to how Subculture is expressed to be. I personally like Subculture. I don't mind working with powdery shadows, but this one is powdery. You definitely want to tap off your brush when you're working with it, and you want to go in with a light hand and sort of build up. I also recommend that doing your eyes first may not be a bad idea because you do get a little bit of fallout with this one. I worked with almost every shade in the palette at this point, and the first time I wore it, I was ready to give it a bad review because I applied the shade Crackle on my lids and I used it over a sticky base, and I found that it just wasn't staying and I had to keep reapplying and reapplying it. But I think that was my mistake when applying this shadow because it does have a little bit of shimmer on it, and so I went in with a sticky base just assuming that the glitter wasn't going to show up, but it actually shows up fine and it doesn't need that level of detail. When you go in with a sticky base, you sort of pack on the powder, and because it is a loose powder, a very powdery shadow, it just starts to kind of cake up a little bit. It doesn't look too good. It kind of oxidizes over a sticky base. So I would definitely say go in with your regular eyeshadow primer and set it with either one of the matte shadows here or any powder that you may have in your collection, and then go in with these shades. Other than that, I really have had no complaints. It's a beautiful palette, again, for everyday looks. You can get slightly more bold looks on this, and the metallics are beautiful, especially if you apply them wet, but the shade Crackle is best applied as is. I would say that out of the entire palette, this is the hardest one to work with, and again, this one is a more powdery formula. So if you like warm tone eyeshadows, this is a very beautiful one to add to your collection. After my initial bad first impression, I'm a lot happier and I've enjoyed the looks that I created. The next palette that I picked up in that haul was one of the NYX In Your Element eyeshadow palettes, and I know that these are off of the Ulta Beauty website, but they are still available on the NYX website, and I've seen them in the NYX stores if you're interested in checking them out. I picked up the one in Earth, and here is what the packaging looks like. It looks like a beautiful watercolor actually, and here are your shades. Now, this is a palette that I've worn several times on my channel as well, and I actually like it. I think it's a really nice palette. I'm wearing it on my eyes today. I created sort of a red tone look. I used this shade here, this one, and this one. So 4 shadows in the palette, and that's how I created the look that I'm wearing. I think it looks really pretty, and I'm happy with it. One of the things that I notice about this palette is that almost every look turns out smoky. And the reason for that is because if you take away this lighter shade, every other shade is really, really deep. Like, I'm looking at my viewfinder right now, and it is pretty true to color with regard to how the colors look. I decided to use this shade all over my lid to lighten it up a little bit, because I have found upon wearing the other shadows that it's dark. It's a dark palette, so you're gonna end up with very smoky, grungy kind of look. So if you like that look, this is something you may be interested in picking up, especially since it's likely on sale right now wherever they have it available. And I thought that the shadows performed just fine. These again are an in-between. They're not too dense, not too firmly pressed, but they are not too powdery either. And so I find that even if you apply your eyeshadow after doing your base makeup, you're really not going to have any problems with fallout. I didn't experience that. I did tap off my brush to be careful, because again, the shades that are in here are quite dark, but this palette comes in other variations. I can't speak to the quality of the other variants because I don't own them, but if they're anything like this, they're actually good. I can't say that it's worth $30 for a drugstore item, but I think that they might be priced at $15 right now. $15, or the point equivalent of that, is how much I picked it up for, and I think it's fine. Honestly, I like the color scheme. I've liked the looks that I've created. I really enjoy having those greens because I like green eyeshadow, and you can also get a very nice berry look, which this is the first time I experimented with the berry shades. I like it. I think it's a nice one. I definitely would recommend it, and I have no problems with it. So that's this one. The last palette that I picked up in that haul was the Urban Decay Heavy Metals palette. And here is that packaging, and of course the palette does slide out. Alright, so I'm covering the mirror with the NYX palette so that you can take a look here. I've played with this palette quite a bit. This is actually a nice palette. I know that you either love or hate the packaging. I like having more architectural pieces in my makeup collection, like the Kat Von D Saint Sinner palette, this one which has sort of that funny shape, or even the Urban Decay Vice palettes. I think it's nice to play around with packaging, so I don't mind it. I realize that it's bulky, but it's a very beautiful display piece if you like to display your makeup like I do. I have to be honest, I haven't played with the neutral shades that are at the top, because when I have a palette that is all metallic shades such as this one, I immediately go to the pops of color. Immediately. This is the palette that I used for my New Year's Eve makeup looks, and everybody seemed to really like that look. I posted on Instagram and I got a lot of really nice feedback on it, and I created it using this palette. The quality is great. The shadows are really pigmented. They go on beautifully. I absolutely love this side of the palette. Now, I haven't tried the top side. Actually, I think I tried this shade Angel Fire just a little bit, but that's about it. Mostly I want it to be down here. The reason why I stayed away from the top is because the top is very neutral, and if I'm going to do a neutral look, I'm pulling out a neutral palette, which likely has metallic neutrals in it as well, and so I just work off of that palette. But I definitely want to make it a point to use this one because the metallic shades are really, really like foiled, and they give a really, really nice look. If you own something like the After Dark palette by Urban Decay, you may not necessarily need this one because the colors are actually quite similar. So here on this side we have the Heavy Metals palette, and on this side the After Dark palette, and as you can see there's a lot of similarity in shades. And so if you already have this one, you may not necessarily need the Heavy Metals palette. So just take a look in your collection and see if you already own the After Dark palette, and then maybe this one wouldn't be a necessity for you. But if you don't own anything like that, I would say this is a very nice addition to your collection, especially since it is currently on sale both on Sephora and Ulta as well. And I'm sure that these neutral metallic shades are beautiful as well, but me being me, I'm drawn to the top, and I thought it was excellent, excellent quality. A similar style palette, also in performance, would be the Chocolate Gold Bar palette from Too Faced. The differences in these two, actually, the Chocolate Gold Bar has some matte shades, so it can stand alone as a complete palette. This one has more of the greens and blues, whereas this one is more into the greens and purples. So if you like blue eyeshadow, this one might be a better choice. They're not too similar now that I look at them, but I think it has a similar concept. Alright, so those were the 4 eyeshadow palettes that I picked up in my Ulta haul. Please let me know if you have any questions on any of these palettes, and if you have them, I would love to know what you think about them. I would say that all in all the palettes were really good quality and delivered to what they were. The only one that I struggled with just a tiny bit at first was with the Tarte Toasted palette, but now that I've gotten to know her a little bit better, I definitely appreciate her more. If you're interested in seeing my follow-up thoughts on the other items that I hauled in that video, definitely give this one a thumbs up so that I know that you enjoy haul updates. If you have a kitschy catchy name for this kind of video, then leave your recommendations down below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching my video. I hope it was useful to you if you were considering purchasing any of these products, and I would love to see you again on my next video very, very soon. Bye-bye!